Hello everybody and welcome along to PSGL Season 31, and we head to Mexico City tonight for the Mexican Grand Prix for the top tier on the PlayStation platform. We were at Belgium last week and what a great race that was. Will Mexico deliver? Well, we have to wait and see. My name is Jess Ball, and joining me in the commentary box as usual on a Monday evening, we got Mr. Aidan Carter. Aidan, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Trying to work my way through the heat as much as possible, praying that it rains at some point in the UK. If you aren't in the UK, then you're very lucky at the moment. For once, we're having a heat wave. But yeah, apart from that, really looking forward to tonight. Like you say, it's going to be really, really interesting. We've had 3 really great races to start off the season so far. It's been championship-wise, of course, we're only 3 races in, but it's still really intriguing what's going on so far. So yeah, looking forward to it. And Mexico, of course, a really, really difficult track for these drivers. So yeah, I'm expecting another great race today.
Yeah, and Mexico is known for a 2-stop race in the past few seasons, even though there was a lot of drivers that tried to make it 1-stop. But I'll have to say that, we'll talk about it in a minute, but Mexico is more to be a 1-stop on this game, with the medium to hards being a more preferable option. But again, we'll talk that after we've gone through what happened last week in Belgium. And Dan Urco, well, he got his season off to a brilliant start from round 3 onwards and took the race victory, but it wasn't quite comfortable for him though, but he still got it, and because of that he now leads the championship. Then we got Asacombe, who finished in P2. He's third in the standings, but with Valter's consistent results he is sitting P2 in the standings by just a few points over Dan Urco. We got Rowan, who's in 4th in the standings. He's not here tonight, he's been replaced by one of our reserve drivers, which again I'll go through in a minute. Then we got Tom Robbo, who was in 6th. Then we got Brock, Ogiano, Jensen, Rudy, Chiquita. Chiquita's not racing tonight as well, so he'll be replaced. Louis is in 12th in the standings, and the Aston Martin on 7. Then we got Fabi, Cazidel, Mish, Marcados, Fede. Then we got our 2 reserves, Legend. Corey's now a reserve now, he's not full-time, but I will tell you who's going to be replacing him in just a second. And we got Namaya, Fazidio, H. Eagle, Romanino and Desso yet to score. And Romanino and Desso are going to be racing tonight as one of our reserves as well. Plenty of time for a lot of these guys to get some more points on the board.
Yeah, plenty of time, like you say, and it's been a bit of an up and down start to the season for a lot of drivers. You haven't really seen those drivers consistently winning at the start of the season or being right at the very top of the field in every single race so far. So it's been quite an intriguing start. It's very close at the very front of the field. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what these drivers can do and who can start to string a bunch of results along one by one after that. It'll be nice to see if anybody can do that. But with it at the moment, it's keeping things very close. Like you see, Dinoco obviously first win of the season last out, but before that I hadn't had a podium. Wouters won the first race and hasn't been in podium contention since. Asacone's been really, really strong in qualifying, but has never quite got that win on the board. So yeah, a lot of drivers a bit up and down so far.
Yes, definitely. And the stewards have been very busy in PSF1, not as much than the other tiers, but we will go through the incident reports that the stewards have decided upon. So there was an incident between Mish and Jensen on lap 14 turn 3, and the stewards decided to award 3 licence points to Jensen and 10 seconds added to their final race time, and that was due to causing a collision in Eau Rouge, and Jensen ran into Mish due to the speed difference and Mish lost control. That means Jensen originally would have finished in P16. Well, he stayed in P16, but he had 10 seconds added to it as well, so now he's 61 seconds off the lead. Cazidel had his penalty removed, so he's been moved up from 11th to 7th, which means some decent points for him in his first full-time race in the McLaren. He's having his second full-time race tonight. And then the incident between Rudy and Rowan on lap 18, turn 1, I believe that was after one of the safety cars, and that was 1 licence point to Rowan and 5 seconds added to his final race time, which drops him down from 7th to outside the points, and that was due to a hit to pass overtaking manoeuvre, which is not allowed at PSGL. So that has pushed the likes of Louis, Fabi, Rudy and Cazidel up a place, which is always great to see, but it's not nice to always get a penalty. But we'll see if Jensen and Rowan can improve on their driving standards ahead of Mexico this week.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they can do. And yeah, like you say, the stewards have been a bit busy for the start of this season. I think amongst the whole, really, it's been kind of that narrative so far, hasn't it? We've seen Danerko lose a podium earlier in the season due to a penalty. So a lot of people throughout the field kind of falling foul maybe of this game being a little bit more difficult to race side by side with. The cars are a little bit more unstable. The cars are obviously, the wheels are bigger as well, and a lot of things like that and a lot of variables like that can make it quite difficult actually to race wheel to wheel with these cars compared to the previous generation of Formula One cars. So yeah, I think drivers still, whilst they're getting used to how the cars feel and how they drive, they're also getting used to how they have to race wheel to wheel with these cars as well. So that's a really interesting dynamic that we're going to have to keep going throughout the end of the season to see if drivers can get on top of that as we now head into our qualifying session for the evening.
Yes, and another dry session for the second week in a row, which is great to see. No rain, but will it translate into the race? We don't know. We don't know about the weather. Only the drivers know about the weather and the Jeffs, of course. So without further ado, let's head into the qualifying session, an 18-minute qualifying session as usual. We're not like PCF1. They do full qualifying. We do short qualifying, and the fastest time at the end of that gets pole position. So we'll go through a few changes for tonight. As I said, Romanino is filling in tonight, but he's replacing Basilio, who can't make it tonight. Desso will be replacing Rowan in the Haas. FVR Nam 93, who's still in the pits at the moment, he replaces Chiquita in the Williams for tonight. And we got a familiar face returning in the Haas for tonight, a familiar face to PSF1 and a former F2 champion, Ard Apple Gamer, also known as Benjamin. He's replacing Orgiano for tonight. So those are your reserves, and we got one brand new full-time driver as obviously the Corey has decided to become a reserve. We got F2 champion contender Ray, who's just been promoted to F1 because of how well he's been doing in F2 this season. So consistent results for him as well, and we've seen that last season with the likes of Santori, the ones who get promoted earlier on in the season. They seem to do quite well. Do you think Ray could do the same?
I think he definitely could, based on what we've seen from F2 so far this season. I don't think the pace gap between F2 and F1 is as big as we have seen it in previous seasons. I'd say there's a lot more overlap between the two divisions this time around, which is really nice to see. And I think Ray would be a very good fit straight into this championship. Like you say, Santeri last season joined, I think, 3 or 4 rounds into the championship, ended up 5th in the standings. I don't think that's out of the question for Ray either, with how up and down the first 3 races of the season have been. Ray's not out of it at all. He's not really that far off in terms of points to anybody in this championship. So it's definitely possible for him if he can get onto the board, and it'll be a great help for McLaren as well. As a team, McLaren haven't really had the best start to the season, but like you mentioned, Kazizel's got good first points. Got his good first points finish last time out as a full-time driver, and now Ray's in to back him up a little bit more.
Yeah, and speaking of Ray, he's heading towards turn number 1 now. One of the longest straights on the calendar. You'll be braking at 210 miles an hour. You're going towards turn 2 and 3. We may see a lot of people invalidate there as well, so we'll keep an eye on that. And we're approaching one of the DRS zones from turn 3 into turn 4. The traction is a lot trickier around here as they head towards turn 5 and 6. Now, as you can see, he was struggling a little bit there as you head towards 6 and 7 then as well, the start of sector 2 then. Obviously slipstream is not allowed in PSF1, so you're not allowed to give your teammate slipstream. And now we're going to one of the most trickiest parts of this circuit, the S section, where we've seen a lot of people go wide or even invalidate. It's a lot easier, I tend to find, on this game, but I know certain drivers in the top tier will beg to differ, but that's why we are in the commentary box rather than on the race chat, as we're seeing Ben cross the line would set his first lap time 1:15.4. We'll watch Ray going through the stadium section and heading towards the final few corners then. He's got quite a bit of ERS left, plenty to go across the line. He doesn't have D-rate, which is good news, for 1:15.4. Not a bad solid lap from the debutant on PSF1, and that's 1:15.4. And Asacombe, a 1:15.047 right off the back. That is a really impressive lap time from him as well. And I just noted down the pole time for F2. We've beaten that, not just by Asacombe, but from Kazizel. The F2 time was a 1:15.099, and Asacombe did a 1:15.047, and Ray's teammate did a 1:15.006. So early on to the session, I think the 1:14s will definitely be possible, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it in the past, haven't we? We've said some things will happen, and then not gone that way at all, really, this season. So we'll wait and see. But it would be a bit of a disaster, I think, of a qualifying session if nobody from here on out could get into the 14s. We'll wait and see which the first drivers to be able to do that are. But that's kind of been the story of Asacombe all season, hasn't it? He's been so strong in qualifying all season long. He's maybe not quite got the quali lap together at the end of the session, but he always starts off the qualifying session right at the front. He just cannot at the moment seem to translate it into that first race win of the season, but there is no doubt it is coming. Of course, last season in PSGL season 30 picked up only one podium, and that was at the very end of the season, and now with 3 races in, already 2 podiums on the board. So it's such a massive improvement for Asacombe already this season compared to the previous. So yeah, would not be surprised to see him right at the front once again at the end. I think Kazizel though is definitely the standout from the first runs. Kazizel not typically known for being that strong in qualifying. I think his race pace is probably a bit stronger than his qualifying pace in previous, from what we've seen from him previously, but that is a really strong time to start off the session, and a new face right at the front of the field. Asacombe and Denerco, not a surprise, because Kazizel maybe a bit of a surprise right at the front of the field.
Well, to be honest, I think Kazizel seems to be a little bit more comfortable in this game, and for those of you that don't know, Kazizel, he was in F2 for the last couple of season. He was there or thereabouts, but always seemed to have a little bit of unluckiness in terms of the race. He had a good qualifying session, but he always got involved in incidents in the race, and there were some races where I believe he won and did really, really well. So the pace was there. So maybe he just took the game like a ducks to water compared to the last game. And obviously that is why he is here in the top division as well and doing extremely well last week. And maybe he could do well this week too as well. The other F2 promotee from last season, Nemaya, is not doing so well in P13. Don't forget he was a runner-up from last season, and he's been beaten so far from the one who was in F2 this season, Ray. So he's got a lot of work to do as part of the game. Obviously hasn't had the game for very long, and that's not a not too shabby lap time from him, a 1:15.403. He's mainly does some stuff on the PC, but it's always great to see him back on the PC, on the PS side as well, back where he belongs as well. But what can you expect from a Pardo gamer on his first race back with us, even though he's only a reserve?
It's going to be interesting, isn't it, to see what Arpal can do. I don't think him himself especially would not want to be reminded of his season last season. I think he had great qualifying pace, and the starts of the race would always seem to go really, really well, and then something would go wrong midway through a race, and he'd either crash or he'd end up at the back of the field and not really score any points. You had a bit of a horror show, unfortunately, for himself last season, which I think is why he's potentially been put off driving full time this time around. But it'll be nice to see what he can do. He's definitely got the pace. He's proven it in the past. Like you say, he's a previous F2 champion. We know what he is capable of. I don't imagine we're going to see him featuring right at the front of the field, being his first race of the season, but solid points run potentially. He could be right in the fight for the points today, so that'd be really, really nice to see.
That would be as well, but don't forget, top 10 will score you points in this league, and if you do get the fastest lap inside the top 10, well, you do get a point, but if anyone else gets outside the top 10, nobody's going to get the point as well, so maybe he's going to push him for that. So he's heading towards turn 3 now to start off his next run, to see if he can go a few turns quicker, and again, the times are just so close compared to what we've seen. I think, remember last week, it was probably the closest qualifying I've seen in ages, and that's probably due to the new era of F1 cars as well, and due to the fact that more people are starting to get used to the game as well. I wonder we'll see people a few hammers off each other again tonight as well. There may be a few people struggling to get to grips with it again, as Remenino's the only one not to set a representative lap time, and Fabry the only person not to set a lap time at all. We'll see who's going to cross the line next. We've got Fede, Ascombe's teammate, who's about to start his lap. We've got a Haas who's about to start his lap as well. And then I believe we got the Williams of Romanino who's about to start his run. And I think we got Brock as well. But meanwhile, Tom, he's going through turn number 1 as well. And he's just hopefully the Ferrari moved out of the way of Tom, which is great to see. But I think we got one of the Red Bulls about to finish his lap. No, he's not. He's invalidated, so he's going to go into the pits. Valters improves to a P8, a 1:15.3. Ray improves to a P9, so that is very, very impressive. Not far off Valters, actually, in P8. Then next cross line, I believe, will be Asacombe. No, it's not Asacombe. He goes into the pits. A part of the game, I believe, aborted his run, so he won't be going again. Tom has invalidated as well, and I think these guys are just not getting their second runs in. It's an easy track to invalidate, and these drivers are definitely proving that.
Yeah, they definitely are. I think every single driver I've gone on board with has invalidated in the S section in the middle of the lap. They're all filing into the pit lane now. Tom's invalidated. I think we've got one of the Aston Martins coming up to the line. That is Louis, but he's now also into the pits having invalidated. So, yeah, a lot of drivers struggling. Desso up towards the line as a reserve tonight in the Haas. Currently 17th, crosses the line up to 14th. Only, well, less than half a second off pole. That's only 14th at the moment. So that shows just, again, how close this grid is in qualifying trim at the moment. So, good improvement, but not enough to get him close to the top 10, as I think further up, Brock has improved to a P3 position on the grid. Of course, Brock picked up pole last time out at Spa, first pole of the season, couldn't quite convert it into a good race result, had quite a tumultuous race by his standards and was horribly affected in the pit lane by some little game glitches that we have still got going on at this point in the game cycle. But he's starting to feature a bit more prominently at the front of the field more often now as Brock, isn't he? Up into third place, second row of the grid. And with a track like Mexico, where the run to turn one is so long, third on the grid is actually a very good spot to be in.
Yeah, it is. We're seeing it in real life as well, where if you start third, then that's probably a decent place to be. And I think not many people are going to be fighting for pole position, it looks like, as well. I believe Mexico was a feature in PSGL last season as well. And I think in most tiers, whoever started pole did not get the best start or did not lead into turn number one. So watch out for whoever starts first. They're going to get the best toe, the best strategy, I think, into turn number one as well. And a lot more time to think about the running towards turn one compared to your rivals in P1 or P2. So maybe Brock is just happy as he is as well. So run for your order quickly as people are on their outlap. So Kazizel in P1 with a 1:15.006. Then Ascombe in second with a 1:15.047. Brock goes into the pits at the moment. He's in third. And then we've got Dan Urker, our championship leader, on 32 points in fourth place with a 1:15.159. And closely followed by Rudy in fifth. H. Eagle, actually. I think one of his best qualifying sessions of the season so far, touch wood, with a 1:15.329. Then our reserves for tonight and making his debut tonight, I believe. Nam with a 1:15.339. Then we got Valdes quite close behind. Ray as well. Fede, that's a big group there. And then we got another group of Apardal Gamer, Tom, Jensen, they're in the 1:15.4s. Then we got the 1:15.5 club of Louis, Mish, and Namaya. And then we got the unrepresentative club at the moment of Romanino and Fabi, not to set a lap time. But Fabi is on a, well, I think he's on a lap, but I will keep an eye on it as he goes through sets two. And I think it's just crucial to get a lap time on the board at this point, because sometimes starting last is not a good idea. And I thought he was going to invalidate there, but luckily he didn't. But there's some races where he scores some decent points, but there's some races where he's just been very, very unlucky. He's just got to be very consistent, because we've seen in previous F1 championships, consistency helps you win the F1 title.
Yeah, it really does help you, doesn't it? Consistency, like you say, and we've not really seen anybody be that consistent so far this season. So if anybody can start doing it, they could put them right at the front of the championship as Fabi comes around the final corner. He's going to get a lap time on the board. Ardapal's just improved to 10th, and Fabi improves to 9th. So good final sector there for Fabi. His first sector wasn't all that strong, so that maybe suggests that Fabi's gone for a car that's maybe a bit slower in a straight line, but better in the corners. As here comes Asacombe to the line, and that's the first driver into the 1:14. So we got our prediction right for once, Jess. We've got a driver into the 14s, and it is Asacombe, a 14.9, the first driver in. Kazizel's invalidated his latest lap, so not improving at the moment. Just seeing if anybody else is up on their time. Denurko is slightly up in the first sector. Just going to see him through the second sector split. He's lost a little bit of time, so unless it's an incredibly good final sector from Denurko, this isn't quite going to challenge Asacombe for a provisional pole.
Nope, it's not, but we have seen people gain the final sector in the past, in particular around Belgium last week. So Denurko could surprise us, but no, it's not going to be pole position. It's going to be 1:15.035, so imagine if he found some more time in the first two sectors. He could have been way above, because if the one Ascombe and probably potentially get pole. So Denurko's still got some pace there in that Ferrari. We've got Mish up to the line in P16. Everyone has set representative lap times at the moment, and they're all so close. I believe, I'm just trying to see where Fabi went. Fabi went into P11 then, so just outside the top 10, 1,000th slower than Philip Valdes in P10, as Valdes, I believe, is on another run. He's got an AlphaTauri in front of him as well. The race winner from Austria, of course, hasn't picked up a win since. He's looking to add another one to his list, but he's not going to add it just yet because he's in the pits, and he's probably going to go for one final run in just a second. I think a lot of people are going to be doing that. Jensen's going to be doing that as well, and don't be surprised to see Desso doing that, unless he wants to get his lap early. We'll have to wait and see. So we're now coming to the crucial part of qualifying, Aiden. Calm before the storm. And everyone is just under 5 or 6 tenths of each other. This is going to be another close qualifying session, it seems.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be incredibly close. Like you say, there's not much to split any of these drivers, so any little margin they can find could help them massively in this qualifying session. But I think the continuing quality trends happen once again as Dessa, like you say, does dive into pit lane and abandon that lap. We're seeing trends again in qualifying, where it's Asacombe at the front of the field after the early runs in the qualifying session, and then you see drivers like Jensen and Nemaya at the back of the field after the early runs in qualifying, and then they somehow pull something out the bag at the very end of the session. It always seems every single time. So if Jensen's 17th right now, expect him to be in the top 5 potentially by the end of this qualifying session, just as the trend that we've seen from that Alpine driver this season. As Ray actually, in the other McLaren, I don't know if we missed that one or not, he's gone 4th fastest. So
wow.
McLaren's 2nd and 4th at the moment with their brand new driver lineup pretty much now. After 4 rounds, we now have a completely new driver lineup in this McLaren, and it's kind of revitalised the team a little bit because Ism on the front row, Ray now 4th in his first race in the top tier, so that is a really, really good lap from Ray, and he's managed to get back into the pit, and I think with just enough time left on the board so he can go again for another run, as H Eagle's also improved up to P6, and this is a much better qualifying showing for H Eagle as well.
Yep, it is. Obviously, he hasn't scored many points in F1 this season. It's been very unlucky, but maybe him could revitalise this championship chance as well, because it's not a long season, but we're race number 4. There could be some races where he starts to be more consistent and I can help him, but the championship hunt once again. We've seen it in other tiers as well. People start off rubbish and then they start to improve a bit more and still in the championship hunt going into the final round. So everyone is warming their tyres for their final runs. Don't forget, no medium tyres in qualifying in F1 22. You're not allowed to choose that on this game for some reason. They all get 4 sets of softs and they get they have to save I think 1 for the race, so they don't want to use all 4 sets in qualifying because otherwise you'll have less to use in the race if you want to use it for like any safety cars, because you never know. We've seen safety cars a lot around Mexico on certain league races, so we'll have to wait and see as everyone's going on their final runs then. And we'll see if anyone can challenge Asacombe. We'll watch out for Brock, who's in P7. He was the one who got pole position last time out, but he was the last person to cross the line. But I wonder if we're going to see exactly the same here. The last person to start a lap time will be the last person to get pole, and not Asacombe off its turf as well. Could we see Ray pull off a surprise? Maybe Makers or may jump off Asacombe as well. I think it's going to be very close between anyone. I can't believe I'm saying this, but anyone in this top 19 can get pole. They just need to find a few attempts and then they'll get there.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those tracks, isn't it, where if you nail the lap, you really get rewarded for it. So that's going to be a really interesting thing to try and note for the rest of this session. I'm just seeing who the furthest along on a lap is at the moment. It was Nam, but Nam is invalidated. So the Nam currently in 9th position in that Williams, not having their best of qualifyings so far as Philip Wouters goes past. Ooh. At the moment. Philip Wouters, good start to the season, really loose at rear end of that Alfa Romeo through the S section there, and he's moved all the way to the left-hand side of the road there, trying to short his run. He is still a 10th up though, so he's finding a bit of time, but at the moment that 10th is only going to get him into 10th position at the moment, so he's got to find a little bit more in this final sector through the stadium section. Of course, different configuration to what Formula E run. They run the full way down the Perotada, whereas these drivers cut it in half as we head into the final corner and up to the line. Philip Wouters just find a little bit more time, but again, only 10th on the grid. Interestingly for Philip Wouters, as Brock, yet again, like he did in Spa at the end of the session, pops up at the front of the timesheets.
There we go. So Brock, the qualifying mastermind at the moment, is on top. Can anyone beat him? I believe we got the Red Bull up to the line while part of Gamer or Fabi can't do it. Fabi's gone to a bit of a spin, and Romanino had a 5-place grid penalty with a collision with Tom. I believe that will be investigated by the stewards for sure. We got Wouters, who has slowed down. H Eagle comes across the line in 7th. I think we got 2 of the Aston Martins on a lap. Who's on first? I think we got Nemaya, who is on first, as we see he's 2 tenths up in the middle sector then, but that will only put him around about where Fedi, Desso and Ben is at the moment on the grid, so not enough for pole position as it stands, but we'll see what he could do in the Alfa Romeo, and that is P7. We've got Kazizel, who jumps Brock into P1 at the moment for this provisional pole. What can his teammate do? Can he respond to that? We got 2 of the Ferraris. Dan Urco could only manage 2nd, a few 100 slower than Kazizel. Meech could only manage 14th. We've got Brock's teammate Tom, who can't improve. He can only manage 9th. So we'll watch Ray to see what he could do. He's a few 100s down. and he improves time, but only doesn't improve position to P5. So I don't think anyone's on the lap again unless you're Jensen. Fede's backed off. I think Jensen can improve a little bit more as well, or has he backed off a bit? Well, he's going to improve a bit on his time, a 1:15.1. But he is invalidated, unfortunately. So he is in last position. But yet again, this grid is represented by 5 or 6 temps. Can you believe that? And the top 3, you just can't get any closer than that as well. But Kazizel is on pole position. Daneko in 7th, Brock in 3rd. The usual people that you would see in the top 3. And Asako only in 4th.
Yeah, one of the trends that we said came true and the other one didn't. And the one trend that came true was Asako holding provisional pole and then not being able to improve on the final run. So Asako, I was on board actually, was slightly down coming through the second sector split and then had a horrible snap of oversteer at the final corner. So I had to dive into the pit lane and abandon that lap. The one that didn't come true was Jensen getting a lap in at the end. Jensen invalidated every run after his initial run in this qualifying session and will start dead last on the grid. Even with Romanino's 5-place grid penalty, Jensen will be dead last on the grid. So really, really bad qualifying, unfortunately, for Jensen. But another new pole sitter for the season, and this time it's Kazizel.
Yes, I think that seems to be the trend with us getting different pole sitters this season. We have Bouters, we had Kazizel, we had Brock as well. I can't remember who the other one was. But let's go through your results then before we go into our commercial breaks. We got Kazizel in P1, Daneko P2, then we got Brock, Asako, Ray, Rudy, Namaya, H Eagle, Tom, Romanino, Louis, Philip Bouters, Nam, Mish, Fabi, Apollo Gamer, Deso, Fede and Jensen. A note to your order. And before we go into the race, let's go have a quick word from our sponsor, title sponsor GT Omega. Okay then, so welcome everybody back to PSF1. We're here for round number 4 of the season and we head to Mexico City for the Mexican Grand Prix. And just a quick reminder, no formation lap due to the tyre glitch, so everybody will be catching the 5 red lights very, very soon. And again, we have a different pole sitter, Kazizel on pole. We got myself, Jess Ball and Aidan Carr to take you through the action for this evening's race, and by the end of these 35 laps we will find out who will win the 4th race of the season. Will we get a 4th different winner? Well, we are about to find out as the 5 red lights are coming up on your screen right now. We got McLaren on pole, Ferrari alongside, and it is lights out and away we go. Let's see who has the decent starts. I tried to get the tyre graphic at the same time, and it is a pretty even launch for both Kazizel and Daneko, but it's right on the middle of this. And also we got McLaren trying to go and make moves in towards turn number 1 then, so keep an eye on Kazizel to the right, Brock to our left as they head towards turn number 3. Then Brock's already to P2 and Daneko has got the race lead then from, I believe, P2, so our pole sitter is all the way down to P5. I think that's what we saw at the beginning of the last race. The pole sitter not have a good start either, so Kazizel is continuing the trend on that one. But as we're seeing, I think H Eagle trying to go side by side with Louis there. He lost a bit of position as well. Part of the gamer lost a bit of position as well. He's down to 10th and he's battling side by side with Namaya up in towards turn number 7, heading towards the S section at the moment. As you can see with the tyre graphic, everybody's on a set of the hard tyres, which is to be expected around this track, as Louis gets past H Eagle up into 7th place as well. Both McLarens not having the best of starts, but our championship leader is already trying to pull away from the rest of the field right now. What a great start from him and from Brock.
Yeah, brilliant start from Daneko, really reacted to the lights well, and then it was just Kazizel's mistake. I think he just locked up into turn 1 and went straight on, missed the corner and let Brock, Asako and Rudy through, so Kazizel from pole down to 5th, so that's going to have to be recovery mode now for the McLaren driver. The one driver that's had an amazing start is Alapal Gamer, up 6 places from the start of this race into 10th position, so a really good start for the Haas Reserves driver this evening, and a good start as well for Louis, of course, in the Aston Martin. Started off the season so well in the first round, has been kind of invisible since, but He's now up into 7th place from 10th on the grid, so good start to the Aston Martin driver trying to pick up where he left off in the first race of the season. As I think further down the field, Jensen trying to work his way up through the field, has already got past Desso, is now side by side with Fabi through turn 2 and 3 and gets the move done. Lovely move from Jensen, up 2 places already into 17th position. But yeah, look at Denurko, he is disappearing off into the lead of this race.
I think this is why he's a championship leader at the moment. He's a man on a mission. He's carrying on his momentum from last week. He got the race victory that he was looking for, and he's deciding that he wants to basically pull away and not let anybody else catch him, and he hopes that he doesn't have a late safety car. Fede has already gained a few places this race, up 4 positions as he's closing up to Philip Valters as well. Rudy's gained a few places as well, up 2 places, and of course Asicombe has gained 1 place as well due to Kazizel losing out at the start as well. Biggest losers got to be Kazizel, and also Namaya as well, down 4, and Mish down 3, and Fabi down 4 as well. Desso is now down into last position, so they got a lot of work to do at the moment. Then to lap 3 then, DRS activated then, and Brock is not going to get the DRS on Denurko, same with Asicombe and Rudy. So the first person to draw your attention to potentially get the move with DRS is the 2 McLarens, Kazizel and Ray. Now this is their first race working with each other. Will they be allowed to race, or will they be having some team orders? I hope they'll be allowed to race, because obviously Ray is trying to learn from the experience Kazizel, but Ray's doing a solid job in 6th right now, holding steady with these guys, not dropping away from the rest of the field and making sure that he can get a little bit of tow from his teammates so far. And we can already see Brook starting to close in on Denurko, so I wonder if the tyres are starting to come into their own with Brook and Asicombe right now.
Yeah, I'm just keeping an eye as well on ERS usage for everybody, because this is probably one of the tracks this season where ERS management is going to be incredibly difficult with how long some of these straights are. And Denurko was at 0% at the end of the pit straight that time around. He has used everything to try and break DRS to Brock behind. Brock's managed to get DRS down that little short straight just before the 3rd sector. Can he get within the detection point just before the turn 17, the penultimate corner, and get within range of the Ferrari? Not quite this time around, but he will be faster in the straight line because Denurko is already derating as they come out of the final corner. Asicombe now within DRS range as well of Brock, and like I say, to the McLarens, will they start racing each other? Will they work together? I think more than anything right now they need to work together to get past Rudy, because Rudy's dropping off the back of the top 3, and Kazizel and Ray have way more ERS than Rudy does in front. So if they want any chance of battling for the podium today, they've got to get past Rudy as quickly as possible.
Yes, and it looks like Kazizel, they made content saying that they wanted to work together, and Kazizel pretty much took out Rudy there, and I think that's an example of a commentator's curse there from Adrian. Not the best of moves from Kazizel there, as Ray tries to go for a move into turn number 4 there, and I think Ray's going to challenge that Asicombe, but all of this squabbling has allowed the top 3 just to break away from the rest of the field, and that is not what the McLarens want. Surely the McLarens have got to work together now to try and close in on the top 3, because otherwise they are going to be in a lot of trouble. And yes, ERS management, there's a few people almost on the 10% mark already of ERS. That is not good, especially that 55% of the lap or so can be taken at full throttle. This race first opened in around about 1962. It's been on and off the calendar for quite a bit. In around 2015 was when Mexico returned on the F1 calendar, and what a great race it has been in real life and in league racing as well. And it's going to be a one-stop strategy today, most likely hards to mediums, most likely. No one has opted for the mediums to start off with as well, so I think it's the first race this season where everyone has opted for the same strategy. I thought Namaya would go for something completely different. Meanwhile, Tom is going to try and go side by side with H Eagle. He's got the DRS, he's got plenty of ERS as well, and he didn't even need to use it going towards turn number 1. He saved a little bit there, and now he can use some to try and get past Louis very soon as well. Very well timed from the Mercedes driver in P7, but H Eagle's going to have the DRS coming in towards turn number 4. We'll see what he can do heading towards there. Can he make the move stick? He stays behind as well, and surely enough, the one starting on the hards probably think, because the tyres are just have a lot of tyre deg around this track as well. You don't really want to be touching the soft at all around this track, and you want to try and get the hards as long as you can, because you never know what could happen. So we'll see what 8 Eagles do to try to close in on Tom again, and we'll see if Tom can break free of Louis and try and get past him. It's shaping up to be a very close race in the midfield. I think pretty much the top 3 are running away with it, but the midfield, bring it on.
Yeah, the midfield is very close at the moment. One thing I'm interested in here is that Ray is actually starting to ever so slightly close in on Brock and Asacombe and is dragging his teammate with him. So Ray's got good raw speed at the moment in clean air. It's just the problem is that Asacombe in the DRS range of Brock at the moment is just being pulled along in that Alpha Tauri, and that is not helping the McLarens in a straight line at the moment. So that is where they are losing out, as Ray now low on ERS as well. So I wonder if Kazizel's going to think about coming back at his teammate. By the way, that incident between Kazizel and Rudy, I don't know what on earth was going on there, but Kazizel completely missed his braking point. Just it must have been by about 50 meters. Just completely missed the corner, and instead of bailing out the corner, just drove into the back of Rudy's car. So I do feel bad for Rudy there. That was a really unnecessary incident that has cost him a lot of positions. He's now down into 11th place and outside of the points. So that is a potential race ruiner there for Rudy. Luckily for him, it doesn't look like he's had any damage, and amazingly, it looks like Kazizel's gotten away with no damage as well. So they can both continue on. It's not over for them, but yeah, Rudy set back big time because of that incident, and that now means that Arda Palkema is up 7 places in this race into P9. What a great start for his first race of the season.
I think he's expecting low expectations, I think, in this race due to the fact that it is his first time back on F1 22 racing competitively as well. And sometimes when you set low expectations, usually you deliver more and perform at your best because you probably have the most fun if you have less pressure. And that is what Benjamin is doing right now in P9. And he's not even that far behind H Eagle, to be fair, but Metzko is known for his DRS trains, I would say, heading towards especially the first sector. So watch out for any breaks of the DRS train and we can start to see some moves. But I think we're getting to the point of the race where some people will be saving their ERS and making sure they have enough before they head into the pits. So there may be some battles happening before the pit stop phase. Meanwhile, Kazizel has got enough potentially to try and get past his teammate. Now, I think they have to work together at this point because otherwise they're going to be in a lot of trouble. Meanwhile, in the background, Romanino has got past Fede up into P14, so Romanino is making his way through the field then. So Kazizel, is he going to go to the right a little bit or right? No, but he's not. He's staying behind his teammate, so he's using a bit of slipstream to try and make sure no one else can close in, and well, basically them two can close in on the guys in front. And I think that's what's helping Ray and Kazizel get past, to be fair. And one thing we forgot to mention about here, we mentioned about invalidations. What we forgot to mention is penalties. Penalties can be a big thing around Mexico on this game. I think the winner of this race will be the one who keeps it clean and scores the less penalties. But I have seen less penalties in Mexico on this game than in previous games, but still quite more penalties than any other track. So if I were you, just keep it on the right lines and you should be absolutely fine. But that's easier said than done because I usually tend to get penalties around here, around Mexico. But we'll have to wait and see as Kazizel is going to challenge Ray once again. But Asacombe has got a brilliant run on Brock heading towards turn number 1 here, coming the start finish straight then. He's got the DRS. Again, he's not using his overtake. He's just using the ERS management, well, DRS, to get past Brock. And I think that is very, very key at this stage, and I think it just shows that the DRS is definitely powerful around this track, and now Asacombe can start hunting Denerco. But would it be too little too late at this point, because he's 2 seconds behind?
Yeah, he kind of sat behind Brock for a few laps there. He had an opportunity to get past Brock the first time they had DRS, but he chose not to take the opportunity and sit behind the Mercedes. I think potentially just to save some ERS, but even in that time, he's not really saved that much. That just goes again to prove that it's so difficult to save ERS around this track. So if you've burnt all your ERS early on, it's fair to say you're not going to get it back unless you get a safety car, or you really have to drive very cautiously at some point in the race, potentially around your pit stop phase. So you're going to see potentially the likes of Denerco, who is still down below 10%, despite having a 2-second lead, has not saved any ERS at all at this point in the race. He is still under 10% for the majority of the lap, which just goes to prove my point. So I think you're just going to see these drivers that are low on ERS stuck on low ERS for the majority of this race. And looking further behind, the McLarens are so tantalisingly close now. The back of Brock's DRS, just 2/10 out that time around for Ray. Not quite close enough to get to the back of Brock's car. But despite derating and not having DRS, Ray's not losing a lot in a straight line. So that suggests to me that Ray's got a pretty fast car in a straight line, even without DRS. So that is going to be interesting when if he gets to the back of Brock, whether he can just breeze past that Mercedes and up into a podium position. And so far, what a great debut showing in the top tier from Ray for moving up from F2 to F1. This has been a really, really strong start so far for the McLaren driver. Same for Kazizel as well. Despite obviously the mistakes he's had in this race, it's still a far better showing than we've seen from him so far this season, as we missed a move, I think, further down from Tom, who has managed to get up into P6. So Mentioned it last week at Spa. Mercedes were kind of starting to build a little bit of momentum. It was Tom that was doing really well, and Brock was having a poor start to the season. It kind of flipped last time round, and now they're both at the front this time around. So Mercedes really starting to turn their season around as Jensen's night goes from bad to worse. I don't know if he's had contact or just spun on his own, but he's now back down to last position.
Yes, Jensen not having a good race at all. And I have to say, I think Ray is probably challenging his inner Santeri at the moment just by trying to do well on debut as well. Or maybe he should have been placed in F1 in the first place from the start of the season, but maybe, obviously, Connor knew that he had to prove himself in F2 first as well. And we have seen it in many seasons. If you do well in F2 early on and start to dominate, you will have a chance in F1. And sometimes you have to make a decision. Would you fight for the championship in F2? Or would you want to get better in terms of your racecraft and racing and race in the top tier, the pinnacle of PSGL PlayStation? And I think Ray has definitely made the right decision there as well. And I think it just makes both championships in F1 and F2 even closer indeed, as Brock just gained a little bit on Asicombe there. We're keeping an eye on Asicombe's ERS. He's harvesting a lot more than Brock, so this could be Brock's opportunity to go for the lunge very, very soon, in about a lap or two potentially as well. Maybe he will be saving some ERS too, as Fede is in the pits on a set of the medium tyres now. I don't think mediums is going to last 20 laps, so he's going to have a tough time trying to get these to the end. Maybe he's hoping for a late safety goal. Maybe he got front wing damage as well. So one AlphaTauri doing very well. One AlphaTauri in last place at the moment. But we'll see what Fede can do from last on the grid on those freshman mediums. And as I said that, he's gone into a spin after turn 2, heading towards turn 3. So yeah, his tyres have been overcooked because he hasn't warmed his tyres enough at the moment, so that's why the yellow flag in sector 1 is there at the moment. But meanwhile, the Mercedes again fighting each other and not really fighting Brock, because Brock is managing to increase the gap again on the two McLarens. They just can't afford to battle like this because Brock could just pull away.
Yeah, I think that the worst thing that happened actually for the two McLarens there is that Asicombe managed to get past Brock, and Asicombe now has more raw speed at the moment than Brock and Denurco at this point in the race, and Asicombe is just closing into the back of Denurco ever so slightly and dragging the Mercedes with him up to the front of this field, and that is just leaving the two McLarens behind. Ray with no ERS is not fast enough in a straight line. I think now might be the right time for the McLarens to swap back again and give Kazizel the opportunity to lead the train. He is tucked right up behind Ray with a lot more ERS, so maybe he is the one to try and close in on the back of Brock, especially if Brock does lose DRS range to Asicombe at some point in the next few laps or so. So that may be the time for team orders to come into play and give Kazizel the opportunity to close back in. Of course, we know Kazizel has a raw speed. He was on pole position, so we know he has got the pace to be fighting at the very front of the field. One other driver struggling a little bit at this phase of the race now is Tom. Tom got past Louis a few laps ago, but is now struggling to hold on to the back of the McLarens as well. So he's just starting to drop away ever so slightly. I think he's just going to keep DRS range this lap around, but he is very, very low at ERS and just keeps teetering on the edge of losing DRS range. So he could be under pressure potentially from Louis a little bit later on in this race as well. Was looking at the front, Brock is clinging on for dear life to the DRS at the back of Asicombe. He's teetering on the edge, but again for another lap he is within range, and that is just helping him extend away from the McLarens.
Yeah, definitely as well. And bearing in mind, penalties could play a factor, so maybe Brock could just use this opportunity to try and push everyone to getting a time penalty. And speaking of time penalties, we got our first one, but it's not the people you think. It's Fede down in 19th position, so it's not really going to make a massive difference. But watch out for the drivers that could be on 2 warnings right now. We have probably seen, I think, in the first few laps, a few people get some warnings. Obviously, we can't tell on this game, unfortunately. We don't have any clear indication as to what we can see. We don't have TAS this season, so we can't see the warnings, unfortunately, but we can see where they could potentially get a warning, because they could cut all 4 wheels off the track or have a slight advantage. So we'll keep an eye on that as this race progresses at the moment. It seems to be a bit of a quiet moment in this race as well, so let us know in the chat, guys, who you think is going to win this race. Don't forget, we are sponsored by our title sponsor, GT Omega, where you can get 5% off GT Omega products by clicking the link in the description. And also, we are sponsored by Grid Rival, and we do a F1 2022 Fantasy League with them, and you can check the link in the description on how to sign up and get predicting for the Belgian Grand Prix in real life starting in just a few weeks time. So those are your sponsors. Let's get back into the racing action then, as Kazizel almost got into range of Ray there, but unfortunately can't quite do it. But on the last game, you wouldn't be able to do that. But it just shows you can drive even closer on this game due to the new regulation of cars, and that's what we like to see. And I think Louis is in this fight now. Eagle could be in this fight very, very soon as well. So these two McLarens have got to get a move on, because we could see people go for moves left, right and centre. It's not going to be that long either before people start to think about going into the pits. I believe it's around lap 18, 19 where people will think about going onto the set of the mediums until the end of the race. We don't know about the weather, but I think by the sound of it, due to the fact it is nice and sunny, I don't think it's going to rain. But you never know, anything can happen in Formula 1, and it usually does. But the train's still going strong. Dan Urco still holding on to his lead, but Asicombe, he's finding a little bit more pace in his car, even with little ERS at the moment.
Yeah, he is pushing very, very hard at the moment. It's taking some different unique lines as well, especially out this last corner. He takes a lot wider of a line through that final corner than anybody else, but it seems to give him a good slingshot onto the pit straight. I'm using this opportunity as well to kind of measure what these cars are looking like in terms of where the speed is on track, and Asicombe at this point of the race clearly has a faster car in a straight line than Dinoco. So I think if he gets within DRS range of that Ferrari, Dinoco's going to be under a whole lot of pressure from that AlphaTauri that just seems to be so much faster in a straight line at the moment. The problem is that where you need the pace to get within DRS range is in the middle part of the lap, and that is where Asicombe is losing. So I think Asicombe's going to have to rely on a mistake potentially from Dinoco to get within range, and we know what Dinoco is like. That is not really going to happen. So yeah, that is the one problem at the moment for Asicombe. He's just going to have to hope for Dinoco to make a mistake in the middle part of the lap so he can get within DRS range. Once he's within range, he's going to be a major threat. But yeah, the top three have just completely driven away from the rest of the field now, haven't they? They've completely dropped Ray, who's now 3 seconds back, and Kazizel still sitting behind. Kazizel is the only one in the field at the moment I can see that is saving any sort of ERS. The only person that I feel like has saved enough ERS that is even near Kazizel is Rudy, and Rudy's had a spin in this race. Rudy's still up at 60% ERS in the middle of that train. Kazizel now at 70% has saved a lot. I now wonder where he's going to use it. Is he just going to sit behind until we get to the pit stop phase and then use a lot of it when we get onto the medium compound tyres to try and get within range of the likes of Brock or Asicombe? Or is he going to use it now and try and get past his teammate? By the looks of the way it's gone so far, I think he's just comfortable to sit there at the moment. Maybe he doesn't think on raw speed he has the pace to catch the top three. So we may see, because this will be the one to come in for an early pit stop, go onto the medium compound tyres and use the excess ERS he has got to push like mental coming out of the pit lane, and then he could maybe jump one of the top three on strategy in that sense. So that is maybe because he was thinking sitting behind his teammate and saving his ERS for the time being. Arlapel Gamer, by the way, P9, looking to make up another position in this race, because H-Eagle really starting to lose pace with his top 7 now.
Yeah, and I think I'm noticing the ones that are going for moves and being more patient are the ones saving ERS, like Apollo Gamer and Kazizel, and the likes of the Aston Martins as well. But there's a few people like Denerco that's hardly on any ERS at all. And for those of you that don't know on this game, if anything less than 10% of ERS on this game, you lose so much power down the straight. It's absolutely mind-blowing, and it just makes so much difference. So that is why you got to be saving as much as you can. And like Aiden said, there's not much to recharge on around this track due to the fact that quite a lot of this track can be taken at high speed, and there's quite a few braking zones, not as many as other tracks, so they really got to be saving. And if they're not careful, then people are going to get past due to the fact that they have more ERS than you. But I think if you want to go for a move with hardly any ERS, turn 1 will be the best place to do so, as Brott is going to be doing exactly that. Maybe in turn 1, nobody chooses to stay behind. We're looking at Kazizel and Ray, who may be thinking to be doing the same thing, but Tom is right on the back of this as well. We'll keep an eye on Brott first as he moves to the right-hand side heading towards turn number 3, and he gets it before the braking zone of turn 4 then. So Brott is up into piece 2 of this race. Very ideal as well. Decent gap between himself and Tom, so the double stacking won't come into much effect going into this race as well. But I think the McLarens have got to think who's going to pit first and who's going to gain more time as well. But we'll have to wait and see. So really good move from Brock then. Can he hold up Asicombe and keep the gap to make sure he stays in P2? He's doing well at the moment, and we'll see how he's set up like at the moment. He's got plenty of ERS as well, so maybe he was just saving enough ERS before the pit stops to go for the move. And I'm thinking Kazizel could do the same thing, maybe Tom as well. Kazizel, I don't know what he's doing, but 81% ERS, he's just probably waiting for the right opportunity to pounce, and I think this could be the lap.
It could definitely be the lap as Danerco's in. End of lap 16, Danerco is into the pit lane for the medium compound tyre. So he is covering off any sort of undercut threat by going early. Now, what do the people around him do? Do they pit the lap after, or do they extend? I think if you're the likes of Brock and Asicombe, you can't pit now. You've got to go long as Kazizel breezes past his teammate and up into third position on the road. I think for the likes of Brock and Asicombe, for them to stand any chance of winning this race, they've got to go long. They cannot go on this. They cannot pit now because they will just fall further back behind Danerco and not have any sort of tyre advantage. So they've surely got to go maybe another 5 or 6 laps and then hope that Danerco's mediums fall off in pace towards the end of the race. That is probably their only hope of winning this race. Also, don't know what has happened to Asicombe's pace because he was within 1.5 seconds of the race leader for a good old amount of time, and then he dropped to 2 seconds back, and then he pretty much let Brock through and now can barely keep up with Brock. So I don't know what has happened to Asicombe's pace, whether something has happened, but he is all of a sudden just lost his pace on these hard compound tyres. So we're now starting to see the majority of the field picking up time penalties. Tom was the first to do it, and half a lap later Arda Palgamer's got the penalty. So yeah, drivers now starting to pick up those time penalties as we get to the midway point.
Yes, I think we may see a chain reaction, unfortunately, and I think that might come into effect very soon, but I think we're seeing Brock and Asicombe not budging. One of the McLarens ideally needs to pit now. None of them choose to do so. Meanwhile, Tom is trying to do so to make sure he has as much advantage as he possibly can as a Pardo gamer. Unfortunately, gets a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, so he's got that looming on his head at the moment, so he's going to drop down quite a bit. He'll have to serve it very soon. Meanwhile, Namaya and H-Eagle going for a move. Namaya up into 6th place already, and at the moment it is an Aston Martin 5-6 right now, and that is good for their constructors' hopes at the moment, because the more cars you have in the top 10, near the top half of this grid, then the more chance you would have to doing well in the constructors, as I just did see someone I think get fastest lap, I believe. I might be wrong. No, it wasn't. It was Mish getting a... It might be Mish, actually. I don't know. But I did see something pop up on my screen. It's hard to tell with the mic position as it is at the moment. But meanwhile, Ascombe still within DRS of Brock. So Brock still leads at the moment. They're still yet to stop. And the top 10 still yet to stop. Danerco, your net race leader, out of the ones who have pitted. Tom all the way down in 15th, but he will gain quite a bit with everyone else pitting. So we're seeing the top 2 staying out, and you must be right. They are having to extend long to cover off the undercut of Danerco, as we've got more pitters of Kazizel and Louis then. So Ray is staying out to avoid the double stat, and we got another speeding in the pit lane victim of Remanino, unfortunately. That is a bit of a shame, but a lot of people are coming out now onto the mediums. Let's see how well they do. Danerco just come across the pit lane exit, so he's ahead of Kazizel and quite a lot of these guys as well. So this undercut has definitely helped him. But I think the main threats are going to be Brock and Asicombe now as well, but they don't really want to be fighting too much, because that is where Danerco is going to really, really shine with having less traffic. He's got some clear air, which is great to see. Meanwhile, Philip Valters and Nam trying to go side by side into this tricky chicane, as Nam has gone off the circuit a little bit there. No damage done though as they head towards turn number 7, and I think Philip Valters just holds position right now. But again, you don't want to be fighting too much once you know you're going to be pitting, so you've got to keep the gap at a steady pace and then go into the pits next lap. But I think Valters is going to be doing that soon because his teammate pitted a lap ago, so that's probably why he has stayed out. Ray, I think, will pit soon as well. We'll keep an eye on Brock. Is Brock going to go in then into the pits? Yes, he does. Asicombe follows him in, and Ray has got to follow him in as well. We'll keep an eye on the pit lane entry to see they do it correctly. Namaya took it a little bit late there in 4th. Valter stays out, surprisingly. That is interesting, but we'll see where Danerco is. Danerco, I think, is going to have a huge advantage. He's already got the fastest lap of this race. We'll keep an eye on Brock. Yeah, Danerco has got a huge lead over the rest of the field. Danerco has timed this absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, he's done a brilliant job there as Danerco. As a Rudy, a much faster lap than our race leader, 17.2. That is a second faster than what Danerco managed on the same set of tyres. That is a really rapid lap from Rudy that time around. So that is a bit of an ominous lap time from the Alpine driver. Could he be one to look out for in the latter stages of this race. I was going to say that while that is a massive lead for Dinerco, the actual pace difference between Dinerco and Brock and Asicone before the pit stop wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be. It was only a second. That, of course, is still a pretty big gap, but from an old set of hards to a fresh set of mediums, 1 second difference isn't as big as I thought it was going to be. So I think if I were Brock and Asicone, I would have just kept going. We've still got 17 laps left in this race. The medium tyres, well, basically at this point in the race, when Dinerco pitted, Dinerco's going longer on the mediums than he did on the hards. Those mediums aren't going to be particularly fast at the end. I would have gone even longer if I were Brock and Asicone, and just hope that the medium tyres of the likes of Dinerco would have just overheated and died by the end of the race. I think that is exactly what Nam and Philip Wouters are hoping for, as well as maybe a safety car. I think they don't think that those medium tyres can go that long without completely losing their pace. So they're going on a lot longer, and then hopefully going to get the time back at the end of the race when everybody else struggles on tyres. I'm still not sure about this strategy. I think Brock and Asicone just stayed out for a bit longer. I don't think they stayed out long enough to make the difference.
Yeah, I think so as well. And you see the difference. It takes a while to warm up your tyres as well. So you're going to lose about a second or two per lap in the first couple of laps, whilst the time on one is a little bit of a squirmy moment for, I think, the AlphaTauri. Asicone has lost a chunk of time fighting with the likes of Brock and the McLaren as well. Tom has got ahead of Ray in the pit stop phase as well. I believe it wasn't due to a penalty. It was just due to Tom having the faster pit stop. Don't forget, you will have to turn into the pit by yourself by pressing a button, and I think Ray might have turned in a little bit too late, which is why Tom has gained a little bit more time in the pits potentially. We'll keep an eye on that at the end of the race as well. We may speak to some of these guys in the podium interviews later on and discuss their things as well if they get onto the podium, because the podium is still there. Tom doesn't want a safety car. Meanwhile, Brock is trying to fight off the one who hasn't pitted yet, Fabi. Very tight going into the stadium section as well. You don't want to be fighting too much, Fabi, because you know Fabi's got a pit soon, whereas Brock does not. That's just losing even more time to Brock and Dinerco as well. Brock is leading this train with Fabi as well, as we've got Wouters and I believe Jensen. No, it's not Jensen, it's Nam, who is in the pit lane, and they're going to be going to set the mediums too. But I don't know why Fabi is fighting all this. Maybe he has the right to fight. It's due to a safety car, as it was going to be 3 wide, but someone backed off, as we're seeing Cazizzo trying to get past Asicone. This is like turned up to 11 at the moment. They're all going fighting right now to try and get P2 as it seems. I think it looks like it's going to be the best of the rest at the moment, as Tom tries to get past Cazizzo into turn 4. Not quite the best position to do so, unfortunately, but yeah, they're just fighting too much, and that's just allowing Dinerco to push even more, as when we've got a bit scrummy again in turn 7. We got Brock being very brave there to try and get past Deso, as Asicone, is he going to get far past Fabi? Still no luck from Asicone, but this time he's got it. He eventually got it, but I think he took him about an extra sector or two to do so. But look at this, Fabi's still fighting in the stadium section, but Asicone closes the door. This is not what the likes of Asicone and Cazizzo wanted. I think Brock is relieved to get ahead of these lot, because he can now start to close in on Dinerco. The rest of them can't do that because they got Fabi in front of them.
Yeah, Brock's managed to get through that pack at the right time, hasn't he? As Deso now finally makes his pit stop in this race. So he's managed to get through just before that carnage kicked off, and Brock is already 2 seconds up the road from Asicone because of that. So yeah, Brock now sitting in a very comfortable net P2 in this race. 5.3 seconds off the back of Dinerco. I don't think that is an attainable gap. I think Dinerco's got this one covered unless there is some sort of safety car. Again, I just don't think this strategy from Brock and Asicone was extreme enough. I don't think they went far enough in one direction to make this strategy work. So I don't see them really gaining anything. That was Ray and Fabi side by side for P7 on the road. Around the outside goes Ray. Lovely move on the Red Bull. Nice clean move as well. Ray gets the move done and is up into 7th place. Make that a net 5th in this race. Of course, Jensen's still yet to pit, and Tom with a time penalty. So Ray, despite maybe not having the best of overall pace of the people around him, doing a very good job strategy-wise and is keeping it clean, and is still on for a top 5 in his first race of the championship, is behind Louis in the Aston Martin, trying to get past the Red Bull or Fabi as well. He should get a really good run on the run down towards the stadium section. He's going to go the long way around the Red Bull, and Fabi gives that one up. He doesn't fight that one too hard, and Louis is up into 8th place.
There we go then. So I think Louis is wanting to make sure that he can score point in this league. So he got points in Austria. He had one of his really good, impressive debuts from an F2 driver from last season. But things haven't materialised since then, but I think he's starting to find his form again, which is great to see. So maybe he likes his track on Mexico, as Asocombe gets past Jensen pretty easily as well. So now Asocombe is now going to try and fight Brock, but 2-second difference between those two is going to be very, very tight. But it looks like Jensen is giving Cazizzo a very tough time heading past turn 2 in towards turn number 3. Is Cazizzo going to pass Jensen heading towards turn number 4, or is Jensen going to fight this? Jensen decided not to fight this. I wonder why Jensen is staying out long. Maybe because he's pulling off that strategy, maybe the late safety car, or maybe he wants to go onto the soft compounded tyres, because that's still a viable option in this race. I'm looking at the strategy to see what the possible strategies could be of this race, as the latest strategy, lap 20 for me, is the softs could last 11 laps. So around about lap 26 or so, the softs could be a viable option. So maybe that's what Jensen is going to do. But if there's a safety car, maybe a chance of trying to get past on the softs is null and void, as Ray had a bit of a moment as Jensen's got past him now. So Ray is having a very tough time, but Jensen, of course, yet to stop. So Ray is going to lose even more time. I think he's going to have the same issue to what we saw with Fabi earlier on. So Ray's got to get the move done ASAP as well, with less percent of ERS. He's using his battery anyway, which I wouldn't advise with low ERS, because you have to save it as much as you can. So here goes Ray, past Jensen, up into 6th place. He's going to chase down Tom for P5. He's still in a net P5, to be fair, now, instead of a net P6. Meanwhile, Valters, his day has gone from bad to worse, hasn't it? P15, and after a great qualifier from H Eagle, well, he's down in P14. So the two Alfa Romeos, they're not having the best of races, with H Eagle struggling to get off the mark yet again. So maybe he just needs to improve his consistency in the races.
Yeah, it's just not working for Alfa Romeo today, is it? Philip Walters has been really strong to start off this season, much stronger than we've potentially seen from him in the past. But this is, not the pace that we've been expecting from Philip Walters after the first 3 rounds of the season, where he's picked up solid top 5 results in almost every round so far. So, yeah, it's not what we expected from Philip Walters. Of course, again, just shows how close this top tier is. Philip Walters currently down in 15th, won the first race of the season, remember. So that just goes to show how close this field is this season. So that is how quickly it can turn on its head. Of course, Philip Walters did pit a lot later than everybody else, as we've got a spinner. That's Alapel Gamer that's dropped the car. Multiple penalties that were kind of going to drop him down the positions anyway, but he's done it by himself. He's managed to spin the car just before the penultimate corner. So that is his race over and done with. I would not be surprised if that is a retirement in the pit lane from the Haas driver as he does head into the pits. As further up, Ray, after that mistake earlier on, gets back past Tom and up into 5th on the road. So a little bit of an error, but in 2 laps, Ray's recovered from that error quite nicely, back up into the top 5 on track. So not really lost anything from that little mistake that he made earlier on. And one person who's having a great comeback through the field is Rudy, now up into 8th position. Considering the contact he had with Cazizzo earlier on, he's nearly right on the back of Cazizzo once again. So Rudy really coming back through the field quite nicely, which is a bit of a shame considering the sprint he had earlier on. Rudy's got good pace, so would have been nice to see what he could have been able to do later on. Could he have been able to challenge for podium potentially? Speaking of the podium positions, Brock is slowly but surely reeling Denurko in. The gap's now down to 4 seconds.
Cazizzo! Sorry to cut you off, Aiden. He's had a bit of a moment in the S's section, unfortunately. So with him helping his teammate, well, he's not going to help his teammate anymore. So that's really up another position, up to P7. Hopefully no damage is done there, but maybe he just got on the power too early, or maybe just struggled in the S section, I don't know, or maybe he took a little bit too much curb. And if I were you, don't take too much curb in the S section around Mexico, because it's more deadly than in F1 2021, and it's more deadly in F1 22. So Cazizzo's going to try and get past Jensen again, but what could have been a solid top 5 finish, it looks like it's going to be 8th place for him. So he's got to make sure he can catch up to the rest of his train. But to be fair, he hasn't lost out that much, so I think he's going to gain quite a bit. Meanwhile, Namaya has got past Romaninho up into P10, so he's on for a solid points finish. Jensen again staying out. He is praying for the miracles to come his way, and I think Jensen is going for softs.
Yeah, he's either going for softs or he is just praying for a safety car. I think in any normal race, considering what had happened to him earlier on, he was not going to get points. So he is just hoping and praying for a safety car. And even if there is a safety car, I think unfortunately for him, that time penalty he's just got is not going to pay him any favours either, because he'd drop out of the points anyway if people were able to sit within range. So yeah, it's been a bit of a bad show tonight, unfortunately, for Jensen in that current P9 position. The only driver in the field yet to stop. Ardapal Gamer is back into the pit lane again for a fresh set of softs. That should be for a fastest lap run, as Mish now picks up a time penalty. And Mish is a good representative of what the medium compound tyres are capable of. He was the first person to pit onto those medium tyres a lap before his teammate, and he is already back down to the pace he was doing on the hards before the pit stop. So only 11 laps in on that stint, and those medium tyres are pretty much at the same pace the hards were, and he has still got 9 laps to go in this race on that same set of tyres. So I do worry here for Denarco that those tyres are going to be very, very dead by the end of this race, just by virtue of what his teammate is currently going through on the same set of tyres. So yeah, that is a bit of a worry for Denarco going forward. The worry is as well that he is still being caught. Denarco is saving some ERS, but Brock has now got that gap down to under 4 seconds and is dragging Asakome with him. So any sort of mistake, or if those tyres do drop off, Denarco is falling back into the clutches of Brock and Asakome again.
And Brock's going to have a huge advantage soon, because he's going to get DRS maybe from the lapped car of Dessler, I believe, in P15. So that is not what Denarco wants, but that's definitely what Brock wants as a Power Gamer, though I keep saying his name wrong all stream. I do apologise. He gets another time penalty, and I won't be surprised if he calls it a day, as we've got Nam, who's picked himself a time penalty as well. Not going to make that much of a difference, as Misha's got a time penalty as well, but may make a difference towards the end of this race as well. So I wonder how much time Brock is going to gain on Denarco just by getting DRS on Denarco. He's not gonna. I was gonna say he was gonna use DRS, but he's proved me wrong and used a bit of DRS. He's gained about 3 or 4 attempts that lap on Denarco alone. So, well, he's not gonna have DRS forever with the lapped cars, but if he keeps this up, he can challenge Denarco for first very, very soon. Meanwhile, Rudy is still on the back of a Kazizel at the moment and still fully in a chance to get maybe a potential. I don't know. He's maybe a lapped car. No, it's not a lapped car. It is Kazizel. I thought it was a lapped car, but I was looking at the wrong gap for some weird reason. You can tell the heat is really getting us today in the commentary box. And for those of you in the UK, make sure you stay safe. And we hope that our thunderstorms could come close enough, to be honest, as Ben gets another penalty. And he's still going, which is great to see right now. But yeah, I have to agree with you. Rudy's having a very good comeback, and I think it just shows his pace around here is pretty decent. Imagine where you would have been if you didn't get tagged by Kazizel earlier on. And I think we're going to have a repeat. Hopefully we won't have a repeat, of what happened earlier. Let's hope they can fight cleaner this time between the pair, because otherwise they're going to have even more harsh words to say in the chat later on, and we don't want to see that.
No, we don't, but yeah, it's been a good comeback from Rudy. Like I say, he is just starting to fade a little bit, though, on those medium compound tyres, just repassed by Kazizel that lap previous after Kazizel's earlier spin, and has already dropped off a DRS range. But I think at the moment, Rudy is pretty safe in P8. Namaya behind is not fast enough to really close in, and H Eagle now getting past Romanino for that final spot inside the top 10, or is he going to be able to? He's still holding the inside line. Can he get the move completed down the inside? He can't quite get the move done. Romanino is going to try and hold it around the outside of turn 1 through turns 2 and 3. Romanino completely goes over track limits and then gives up the position. So H Eagle into 10th position, Romanino down to 11th. This is allowing Philip Wouters to close back in and trying to steal a point at the end of this race as Philip Wouters from what's been a pretty dreadful race by his own standards. So still trying to get inside the points to keep the point streak running, of course, in this championship. As look at the gap for the lead. It's now down to 2.8. Brock has got good pace. Denarco is still saving some ERS, but Brock has got really decent pace. He didn't have DRS on that previous lap for Ardapal Gamer, so that is pure speed at the moment for Brock. I wonder if Denarco has now just hit that phase where those medium compound tyres are starting to struggle. Remember, he was doing low 18s at the start of the stint. He is in the mid 18s still, so he's not had that much of a pace drop off, but Brock was half a second faster that lap round.
There we go, 1:18.1 was Brock's time there on the last lap there, as well as I'm just getting rid of a certain bot in the chat. It's not doing us any favours at the moment, but anyway, 2.7 now, and I wonder if it's going to get to 2 seconds at the end of the next lap as well, or will it be too little too late? But I think the danger that Brock has now is that Nerco's using less ERS. I think he's been told by his engineer to save a little bit, because he knows that Brock is coming very soon, and Brock is going to approach another lapped car again to try and close in just a little bit more. But I'm sure Brock is going to be happy with second place anyway, because he was very unlucky with Belgium. And to be honest, I think the curse, of getting pole position is starting to come true at the moment, because the guy who started in pole position, Kazizel, is down in 7th position. And the one who started near the front row with Deneko and Brock, P1 and P2 right now, and still holding strong at the moment as we're about to start lap 32. Time penalties will come into effect with the likes of Tom. Tom will drop down, so Ray at the moment, and it stands, will finish in P4, but I think you want to get past Tom ASAP as we got a yellow flag. That was, I think, lapped cars, moving out the way, I think. Yeah, it is lapped cars moving out the way, so yes, luckily the lapped cars moved out the way pretty easily there as Ben picks up another penalty, and I wonder if he's going to call it quits. Yeah, he's going to call it quits. Unfortunately, that is his race done. That makes it our second retirement of this race. Only 2 retirements so far, which is great to see. I have to say, apart from the spin we've seen from Kazizel and Rudy with the incident there, it's been a pretty clean race from these drivers so far.
Yeah, it's been nice to see, actually. It's been a nice, clean race. So, yeah, maybe not the most exciting, but it's been a pretty decent race throughout the field. There's good little battles going on at the moment. There's a battle going on for 4th place as it stands. Tom holds it on track, but with that time penalty, will drop down behind Rudy potentially as it stands. I think Rudy is just outside penalty range of Tom at the moment. So Tom, with that penalty, could drop down to 8th position. I think it's looking more likely 7th at the moment, but it's Ray at the moment who will be in 4th position as it stands. But Louis, once again, just like he did in Austria in the first race of the season, kind of flying under the radar, hasn't made any big headlines, hasn't done anything too shocking, but has kept it clean, has made moves, has pitted at the right time, has gone well on strategy, and has just picked up drivers as they've made mistakes, and is now running in 6th, a net P5 with that penalty. That would be his second 5th place finish of the season, and that would be a good return to form for the Aston Martin driver and the team as well, of course, considering they've not really had the best of times in the last 2 rounds of the season. It was a great start for Louis, and then he hasn't scored since the first round of the season, so back into the points for Louis this time around would be really, really nice to see, as Ray's going to go for the move on track this time around, I think potentially on Tom. He does this further down the field. I think Romagnino has gone for a spin, so has dropped outside of the points now. Philip Wouters is into that final points position as Ray gets past Tom on track into P4, so we'll see if Louis can follow through and then maybe challenge Ray for that 4th position.
There we go. So this is going to be the fight that we want to see, the battle for 4th place on the road. But Louis would want to get both Ray and Tom as well. Louis almost did it as they've sent both Tom into a spin. And I wonder if there's going to be some words said in the chat after this race. I'm almost certain that's definitely going to be reported. I wonder if it was over ambitious from Louis or maybe over ambitious for Tom, but it was hard to see from our angle. But luckily, stewards will have access to different POVs from all the drivers, so they will make a more educated decision than we would ever do. So we'll see what they can do. But Tom's dropped all the way down in December, which means the 2 McLarens are in 4th and 6th now, which means more decent points from Ray and Kazizel, even though Kazizel may have a steward's reports looming under his head. He's still got to fight as if he's not getting that steward's report, so he's going to do that at the moment. A second behind Louis, so he's not winning even DRS range. Gap now between Deneko and Brock is game on, 1.8 seconds. I don't think it's going to be enough to go for the win on the final lap, but we're starting to see Deneko's tyres start to die a little bit as well, and according to my little data that I compiled before this race, the mediums could only last 20 laps. Are we starting to see the crossover point for Deneko's tyres right now? The gap's coming down even more, 1.5, so I wonder if Brock is starting to gain more traction in the corners. Another yellow flag, that is an Alpine. I think it might be Jensen, that is Jensen, who's definitely hanging there so far, but he's keeping going, which is great to see. 1.4 now is the gap between Deneko and Brock. The win could be well and truly on, and he's gained even more speed towards the S section as well, but we'll see what Brock can do. You never know, Deneko could get a penalty and he could be within range of Deneko at the moment as they go through the stadium section. Then for the third to last time of this motor race, still got 2 laps to close in on Deneko and see if he can get the win. 1.4, almost at 1.3 then. And there we go, as we started to close in just a little bit. 1.2, he's got to gain 2 tenths now, and he will be within DRS. Yellow flags at the background, that's, I think it was Nam getting past H. Eagle, but no safety cars in this race. No, not even any VSCs, which is great to see. And I think we've seen the same trend to what we saw in F2, because I think in F2 we had no safety cars either. So Yeah, I think that's a trend we are seeing tonight. As 1 second, he's almost within DRS. I think Brock's tyres already start to come into his own here. I think him staying out for a little bit longer is saving him a little bit here.
Yeah, it really is. He's pushing like crazy as well. He's dropped Asicome, who's on the same age of tyres, by 4 seconds. So Brock is really on it at the moment, trying to get within that DRS range of Denurko in front. The problem is Denurko still has a bit of DRS left to use, so it's going to make it difficult for Brock to get close enough to the Ferrari to make a move. He's going to have to hope that Denurko makes a mistake somewhere towards the end of this race. By the way, just to comment on that little incident we had between Louis there and Tom. Kind of weird. I was on board with Louis for that situation. He was down the inside. He wasn't fully down the inside. He was kind of level with Tom's rear wheel, but Tom turned into the corner very early, and I think in a sense to try and get Louis to scare Louis out the corner, and there was contact made. I don't think Tom really left sufficient room, but it's going to be an interesting call because it was kind of half of one, half a dozen of the other, so they couldn't really make their mind. Louis couldn't make his mind up as to whether he wanted to make the move, and Tom turned into the corner too early for there to be another car on the inside. So yeah, a really interesting move there. As now Louis under pressure from Kazizel now, who's trying to recover up to the top 5, going to go down the inside. Louis going to force him all the way to the grass. They wheel bang a little bit on the run towards turn number 1, but Kazizel should have the move done, and he is up into 5th place. So McLaren 4-5 as it stands, as Philip Wouters further back up into 9th position now, continuing his recovery through the field after a poor races. Look at the gap for the lead. It's 7/10 of a second. Problem is, we've only got one DRS zone left on this track, and it's the run to the final sector. I think if there was one more lap left in this race, Brock would have had this.
Yeah, I think he's left it too little too late, unfortunately, but Brock is doing all he can to make sure Denurko cannot win this race. You never know, Denurko could get a time penalty, so we'll see what he could do. This is the final DRS zone on this lap, and I don't think it's going to be enough, unfortunately. He tried his best, but to no avail, unfortunately. But I have to say, Brock could be very, very proud with his achievements in today's race. He came so close, but there was only one man who could come on top today. He took the lead at the start of the race. He stayed there. Denurko wins in Mexico for round number 4 of the season to make it the first repeat winner of the season, winning 2 races in a row. Is it a sign for things to come for the Ferrari driver? Asicome completes the podium along with Brock, and Ray on his PS F1 debut crossed the line in P4 with his teammate in P5. I have to say that is impressive by my standards. I'm sure everyone will be very happy with that. I'm sure James and Evan will be very happy with that as well, your F2 commentators. And we got Louis, Rudy, Wouters, Namaya and Tom. Your final point scorers pending any stewards investigations, and H Eagle missing out by 2.9 seconds there. So very close towards the end, but yeah, like you said, I think if there was one more lap, Brock would have had this. But yeah, Denurko did an excellent job just to hold Brock for his dear life. You can see he was starting to struggle on the final few laps, which is why Brock was having the advantage there. But yeah, I think we're starting to see the true championship contenders. Brock not having, well, he almost got pole earlier on, but to be honest, he was probably glad that he didn't get pole because he got P2 and a decent P2 at that, and Denurko didn't get pole. He took the race win. Fabi got driver of the day in game, of course, but there's been quite a few standouts today, and I have to say the top 3 being one of them as well, and Fede did a great job delivering when it counted for the McLaren team.
Yeah, did a really, really good job. Like you say, Ray did a brilliant job first round of the season. To get a P4 in your first race in the top tier is really great, and a potential great thing, a great sign of things to come for Ray coming forwards in this championship. To be 1 place off a podium in your first round is really, really strong. What a great debut race for Ray in this championship. But yeah, Denurko, first repeat winner of the season. There's something about Shizou drivers and not being able to win from pole at the moment. It's just bad luck at the moment. It seems to not be able to help them at the moment. Brock had it last time out, because Izzo had it this time out. But yeah, like you say, I think we're starting to see the proper championship front runners emerging now. We've seen Denurko at the front of the field. Brock, for a second race in a row, had incredible pace. Obviously was really unlucky in Spa last time out, but pace-wise was right there the whole way through. And Asicome, 3 podiums in 4 races. Still not that elusive first win, but he has been at the front every single race so far this season. So yeah, I think we're starting to see those drivers feature at the front of the field. Anybody else that can challenge? I don't know. Philip Wouters started off the season really well, but it's the pace that we saw from Philip Wouters in the very first round of the season just starting to fade a little bit. Only P8 today, worst result of the season so far for the Alfa Romeo driver.
Yes, let's run through your results then before we go into podium interviews then. So, Denurko wins in Mexico, his second win in a row. Brock comes across the line in P2 and almost matched it, well, actually beat Denurko's lap there in the fastest lap, so pretty great to see there. Ascombe in third, Ray in fourth, Cazidor in fifth, Louis in sixth, returning to great form there after some poor showings in the last 2 rounds. Rudy in seventh, he got the fastest lap as well, so he'll get some extra point for that. Philip Valdez in eighth, Namaya ninth, Tom will be your final point scorers. Your finishers will be H. Eagle, Nam, Deso, Fabi, Mish, Romanino and Jensen. And we only had 2 retirements today of Aparta Gamer and Fede, unfortunately. Let's hope they can have a good race going into the next round of the season, which it will be Japan and Suzuka. I had to look up very quickly to see what the next round is, but there we go. 4 races in, and Dernaco coming out on top in 2 of them and extended championship lead.
Yeah, extended championship lead, like you say, started off the season with 2 results that are maybe a little bit subpar by his own really high standards. But yeah, last 2 races, he's really emerged as the front runner, as a lot of people expected, I think, coming into the season, being the only championship, one of the only championship contenders from last season to return for season 31. So yeah, not a surprise to see Dernaco at the front as well. But I think got to give a shout out to Brock today as well. I think first 2 rounds of the season, we've mentioned it a couple of times, Brock really struggled in comparison to Tom, I think, in the first 2 rounds of the season. But last 2 rounds that we've had so far, Brock has really, really turned it around, and today was a really great showing. And with a lap extra, that could have been Brock's win today, and that could have been our 4th different winner in 4 races. So close. I think Brock will be really frustrated that he didn't get another lap to have a go at Dernaco.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Brock had the pace early on as well, and I think I'm glad that he didn't go into the pits like Dernaco did, because otherwise he probably wouldn't even challenge for the win, and Dernaco would have been left for dust as well. And I think another impressive performance as well was Rudy as well. Despite that spin, he was able to recover to finish in P7. But again, imagine where he would have been if he didn't have that spin with Kazizel as well. And he got passed by Rudy by Louis in P6 there as well. And obviously, Rudy being the F3 champion from last season. A big jump to F1, but he's definitely stepping up to the plate. Maybe Japan, maybe a good track for him. But I have to say, Japan has similar characteristics to Mexico. It has the S's section like Mexico, which I think is what it's based off as well, which is very true. You then got the Dunlop curve, the Denver curves as well, which is very, very blinding when you approach it, especially in the official standard as well. And then you got the famous spoon and 130R. We've seen some brave moves in the past as well, so I'm very much looking forward to this race, and I've enjoyed Japan races at PSGL as well, and a lot of people have done well in the past, but we'll see what these drivers could do on this gamer around a very tricky track, but it's a track where they get less penalties, so that's one less thing to worry on, I guess.
Yeah, one less thing for these drivers to worry about definitely is going to be the penalty situation, but Japan is a really difficult track. It's probably the most traditional track of all the traditional ones we're going to this season, isn't it? It's a narrow track, not a lot of straight, loads of successive corners that can really overheat the tyres. It's difficult to find a setup that will work for every single part of the track, and beyond that as well, of course, any sort of mistake you make at Japan, heavily punished. So yeah, that's going to be really, really interesting, and that could be, again, another track, because it is so unique compared to everything that we go to this season. It could be another track that brings a surprise result like we've seen in the early parts of this season. So yeah, really looking forward to Japan. It's going to be the first time I've commentated on a race around Japan in a couple seasons now. I think it must be the start of the previous game cycle that I last commentated on a race at Japan. So I'm excited to get back to Suzuka. It is definitely a personal favourite of mine, and for a lot of drivers as well, it is definitely a driver's circuit. So I'm imagining it's going to be a favourite amongst a lot of people.
It's a favourite of mine as well, because I've got my last podium on the F1 2021 game around this track as well. So it always has a special place in my heart. But will it have a special place in the driver's heart when we go there next week? Hopefully we'll wait for just a little bit to see if Dernaco wants to speak to us in interviews, because I think we left it a little bit late last week, and then Dernaco showed up as soon as we said goodbye, which was a bit of a shame. So we'll just hang on for a few more minutes, but you can enjoy the rest of the races for the Mexican Grand Prix today. We had F2, F4 and F6 on at 7. You can check those out straight after this, as well as F3, F5, F7 and F8 as well. You can check those out as well. Those were all streamed today, and the next race will be on Wednesday evening with Dan Field and Jack Kanan taking you through the PC F1 action around Japan, and we'll see how the F1 esports drivers tackle that track. Then we got the PC F2 drivers with Luke Etheridge and Chris Buxton take you through the action there. The cream of the crop, the next generation of drivers to get into F1 esports. Then obviously we have the lower PC tiers on as well, like F3 to F6 on then as well. Then we have on Sunday the lower PS tiers, and then we got myself and Aidan taking you through the action on Mondays at 8 PM for Japan then as well. And it doesn't look like Dainoko doesn't want to show up, so we are going to end it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will leave you with a quick word from our sponsors. But until then, I've been Jessica Ball and Aidan's been Aidan Carter. We will see you next week for the Japanese Grand Prix. Until then, bye-bye.
Was brought to you by GT Omega and Grid Rival, proudly supporting PSGL.